Hi everybody, Jed Ayres here, and welcome to another episode of The Attic. And visiting us today in The Attic is a very special guest, Nabeel Youakim of Tehama. Nabeel is the Chief Development Officer for Tehama, which is a very interesting startup born out of a database services solution that was handling super high security confidential contracts using a homegrown DaaS platform. Nabeel is the perfect guest to help us understand their unique product. He has decades of experience in the end-user computing industry, and prior to joining Tahima, he spent 22 years at Citrix in executive leadership positions. One of his key contributions was managing the Citrix alliance with Microsoft, including the time when it wasn't clear if Microsoft was going to squash Citrix, a time when they almost went under. Nabeel has been at Microsoft earlier in his career, so I'm very interested to hear how Nabeel's leadership at Citrix helped them survive. He's always a dynamic presence at EUC events and someone who I'm really looking forward to catching up with. All right, well, hey Nabeel, welcome to The Attic. We're so excited to have you here today. Really wonderful that you could join us.
G'day, Jed. It's really a pleasure to be here. It really is good to talk to you guys.
It was fun to have lunch with you and see you at HIMSS a few weeks ago in Las Vegas. I think that was the first really large event that I had been to since we saw each other in Nashville at Disrupt, which I guess was almost 2 years ago, if you can believe that.
Yeah, HIMSS was exciting for all of us. I mean, we were all sort of getting on a plane for the first time, going to a big conference in Vegas, of all places. But I think they pulled it off. I mean, I was worried even 24 hours beforehand, do we go or don't we go? And we all went.
Yes, it was great. And for us, obviously there was a way fewer customers there, but we had a pavilion with 9 partners in our booth, and you, Tahama and your new company, you were part of it. So yeah, it was as much as we got to see customers, it was great to also reconnect with the EUC community and our IGEL Ready partners. So I'm totally excited to talk to you about Tahama because new exciting role for you in this company, and certainly when we had lunch together, you explained to me Tahama in a way that I had never heard of it before. I always thought of it as sort of as a straightforward DaaS player, and the way you explained it was totally different than any way I'd heard it before. So I'm excited for everyone that's listening to The Attic to hear it from you and sort of the way that you're positioning it and the vision that you have in terms of where you can take it. But because this is The Attic, we want to talk about Nabeel and your origin story and some of the insights that you have around partnership and leadership. And that's the fun part of this. It's not all tech. A lot of it's more of the leadership and partnership and the wisdom that you have in the, I guess, almost 3 decades probably of being in the tech space.
You're very kind to say only 3 decades.
Well, yeah, let's start at the beginning of those decades then. I know anyone that listens to you speak knows you have a Australian accent, but tell us about your where you grew up and where you were born.
Yeah, most people start with South Africa and then they go to New Zealand and they go to sometimes to the UK before they pick Australia. I'm not sure why. Maybe I don't look Australian. That's because I wasn't born in Australia. Okay. I actually was born in the Middle East. I was born in Jordan, Amman, Jordan, some time ago now, but my parents left there in the early 60s and migrated to Australia. And obviously I've lived in Australia ever since I was a young boy.
Wow. And so are you bilingual?
I am. I speak Arabic fluently. I can't read or write, but I do speak it fluently.
Well, that's great. I guess you keep what you learned before you were 5 or whatever, and then you moved and you picked up that wonderful Australian accent.
Well, I give the credit to my parents. They kept speaking to me in Arabic as I was younger and allowing me to mix with some of the community, the Jordanian, Palestinian community in Australia. That allowed me to keep my Arabic going.
And so why did you move? Why did your parents move to Australia?
It was just the idea of a better world. I mean, the Middle East and the Arab world was a very tough place for us to live, for my parents to be there, and they thought they'd try something different. Australia was offering practically free passage to Australia for new immigrants, and my father said, let's give it a go. We'll go over there for 6 months. If we don't like it, we can always come back. And obviously we never came back. We loved it so much. It was such a great country. I like very much, America was in the early 50s and 60s, a great place, a lot of opportunity for everyone and anyone to work. Anyone who worked hard could make a great living. And we stayed there. We pulled a lot of our family actually from the Middle East. My father's siblings, my mother's siblings, a lot of them moved to Australia with us.
And what city did you live in?
Originally, we went to Melbourne, and my mum said it's too cold in Melbourne. I mean, it's not as cold as some Ottawa, where I am now based out of with the Tahima, but it was cold enough for my mum coming out of the Middle East. So we tried Melbourne for about 4 months. We said, no, it's not going to work. So we moved to Sydney, and we ended up loving Sydney. It was the middle of the summertime. It was great. There's a great Arabic community around us. So my mum felt comfortable there, and that's where I grew up. I learned to play rugby league. Maybe we'll talk about sport later on, but I'm a rugby player, and it was a great place to bring up kids and bring up a family.
So, and how many in your family? How, you have brothers or sisters?
I have a younger brother who's 11 years younger than me, just the two of us.
Okay, great. And so what did your parents do in Sydney, or what was their occupation?
My father was an electrician, and he ended up working for a company called Otis, the elevator company.
Oh, yeah.
He was an electrician, so I used to go on calls with him. It was a lot of fun riding on top of the elevator, not inside it. And my mother just worked in a factory. She was a machinist. She became an expert at making shoes, using the specialized machines to make shoes, and she became very much a specialist in her industry for a long, long time. But just normal sort of good trade people, and they built an amazing lifestyle for my brother and myself, and brought the rest of the family out.
That's great. And so what were you like as a kid? What were you into? Were you surfing the waves of the Sydney beaches there? And
yeah, we lived about 50 minutes from the beach, so it was a bus ride. So I'd get on the bus every weekend, and we'd go down the beach and hang out, of course. That was a lot of fun. That's the best thing to do in Sydney. But I also played rugby. I played rugby league, which is a version of rugby that is played here in the US, and I was part of the Redfern or the South Sydney Club, and I ended up doing quite well with it. Actually, I nearly stayed into the major league component of the game, but I broke too many bones when I was much older, and my mother said, "That's it, boy. You're going to get out of here."
yeah, well, your nose still looks like it's straight, so no one got that, huh?
Thank you. I didn't break it. My nose broke, my ankle broke. I had a couple of ribs go, and I don't know if you've seen the rugby play. It's a rough game.
Yeah.
They don't have all the padding that you have in the NFL here, but it's I love the game. I still watch it live. Right now, it's the finals in Australia for the final 6 teams in the competition. So, and my team is in the finals, so I'm still watching it every night at about 3 a.m. in the morning.
Right. You got to get up super early. So, tell us about the path that leads you from rugby to technology. How did you get into the world of tech?
Well, at high school, we were looking into where to go to university, as they call it over there, rather than college.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine and myself saw this notice in the notice board saying computer science. And we thought, I wonder what that is. So we applied, and we got in. And so I ended up going to University of Technology, Sydney, studying computer science in the 70s.
Wow.
Some time back now, but it was a discipline back then.
Yeah, that's great. And so you graduate from the university, and where do you go from there?
So as part of the university program, there was 1 year internship, and I got taken up by Burroughs. Burroughs, again, was a big mainframe manufacturer back then. They've now called Unisys. They merged with a company called Sperry. So I joined Burroughs in their technical side of the business, installing mainframes, showing mainframes, demonstrating mainframes, and working with customers using mainframe computers.
That's great. So we come full circle in your career in end user compute. It's great.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Of course, at the end of the mainframe was a dumb terminal that connected, and everything ran centrally. So you're right. I mean, I've been in technology all my career. I've been on the vendor side all my career as well. It's really interesting. I was just thinking about that the other day. I've really been on the one side of technology, sort of selling it, marketing it, installing it. And it's been a lot of fun. Technology has been a great industry, of course.
So how did you get from Burroughs selling mainframes to the biggest PC maker? You ended up at Microsoft, right? How did that work?
So after 10 years of Burroughs, I got pulled out of there by one of their partners actually selling legal accounting software. And I said, you're a great salesperson, Nabeel. Come join our team. And it was time to leave Burroughs after 10 years. At that time, they'd already merged with Sperry, became Unisys, and they were getting more and more of a services company than a mainframe computer company. Anyway, I left them. I joined this partner called Law Data Services. I wasn't there for very long, and I moved out of there and joined another company selling digital VAX systems, so mini computers. And then Microsoft came along looking for a database expert. One of my specialities is database, and they was just about to come out with a product called Microsoft Access.
Oh, yes.
And they hired me as a product manager to be a database expert and launch Microsoft Access in Australia. So that's how I got into Microsoft, through my database skill set, which, was pretty average. It wasn't great, but at Microsoft, they're all about Word and Excel, and that's about it at the time. So they really were looking for more technically competent salespeople, and I joined as a product manager back in 1992.
Wow. Okay. And so, tell us how do you end up in the United States, and how do you end up at Citrix?
So I was at Microsoft for 6 years, and I moved on to be a director of product management at Microsoft and running one of the divisions, selling to the mid-market and looking after resellers, actually, what they call their organization customer unit. And I met with a team from Citrix who'd come out in about 97. They came out to Australia to promote Citrix. They were doing obviously the Windows NT embedded thing that they were doing. And I sat down and I listened to their presentation, and they said, well, what do you think? Can we work with you? And I said to them bluntly, no. You are a competitor to what I want to do in Australia. You're selling an OEM version, which all the money goes back to the US. Well, I'm selling a local Windows version of Windows NT and Windows Server, and I need to get the money locally. So it was really a very interesting conversation I had with them. They said, you're the first person that actually been direct with us about this conversation. Thank you very much. And they went away. And then about 4 months later, they came and said, well, we're actually going to hire someone in Australia to run the Asia Pacific region. Would you like to apply for the job?
Interesting. So having an opinion, and I'm sure that probably left
just being honest with them, really. Yeah. It was about being just, they did, you're the first person that's ever told us that at Microsoft. I said, well, that's the truth. I mean, you talk to Microsoft corporate, of course they want to work with you because they run the corporate program and they're happy for you to OEM Windows, but you talk to a subsidiary like I am in Australia, and you're really a competitor in the market. Right. So just FYI.
So you take on the Citrix brand in APAC and help them launch that? Is that's sort of your initial assignment at Citrix?
Yeah, Citrix has acquired a company in Australia called Datapack. There's 27 people, and they wanted to bring someone on board to run that company. They had some technology, but also a go-to-market sales team. So they wanted someone to run that company and grow the Asia Pacific region for Citrix. So I was employee number 350 at Citrix. I was hired to really grow the Asia Pacific business of sales and services. And, I went about building the business in Singapore, and we got into China and India and Korea, and I developed the Australian market and built a team of sales and marketing people selling the Citrix technology for about 5 years. I was in Australia before I got the knock on the door to move.
So Nabeel, you get the knock to move to South Florida, to Fort Lauderdale, and you, what's your assignment out the gate once you get there?
Well, as part of being in Australia and having been at Microsoft for so many years, I was always talking back to the corporate team, especially to Mark Templeton and the team, about how to work with Microsoft and what we should be doing and how we can go to market with them to sort of leverage their presence, obviously, everywhere in the world. And they said, yeah, it's fine. And then eventually the relationship between Citrix and Microsoft got a bit tense at the corporate level. And therefore they knocked on my door and said, can you come over here, go up to Redmond and see if you can sort out this relationship? Since you know Microsoft so well and you know the people, maybe you can help us get this relationship back on track, because it was getting a bit tough in the marketplace, and especially some of the big deals Citrix had were sort of stalled because Microsoft has sort of made some noise about competing with Citrix, because they just acquired from Citrix the multi-user code base. They went and built that into what they called, Windows Terminal Server Edition. They were just about to go to market with it, and they started to make some noise about competing with Citrix, which affected a lot of Citrix customers who thought, you know what, we better wait to see what Microsoft's doing before we go and double down on our Citrix purchases.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of people tell this story, but it feels like the first time I've ever heard it from you, and you were in the middle of what I would consider one of the biggest crises Citrix faced early on, right? So tell us a little bit more about how you navigated that.
Well, yeah, it was getting quite dire. I mean, the Citrix stock price had dropped down to $4.77. This is back in 2002. And it was nothing much than just some messages from Microsoft to the marketplace But the relationship between Citrix and Microsoft was so important that anything that Microsoft did had a big effect on Citrix. So I came across here and I went to Redmond and talked to some of the Microsoft people, and I came to Fort Lauderdale and talked to some of the Citrix people before physically moving. I did accept the job, and I accepted I would move my family over to the US, and they expected me to go to Redmond, of course, because that's where Microsoft's headquarters is, and to work with them. But when I came here and met with both management teams and the product team with terminal services, I quickly realized the problem wasn't Microsoft. The problem was at Citrix. Citrix just didn't know how to work with a big partner like Microsoft, even though they'd been partners for a long time and they negotiated some business and they exchanged some code, of course, back in 97, I think it was, when they exchanged the code, and Citrix, Microsoft bought the code from Citrix. But the relationship was just not managed very well from a sort of people perspective, from an engineering perspective, from a business development perspective. And the bigger problem was at Citrix more than it was at Microsoft. So I ended up basing myself in Fort Lauderdale, obviously working with the Citrix team and working with the Microsoft team. We agreed with Microsoft to actually move the people that were involved in that relationship out and bring a fresh set of people in and get them more educated. And it was very simple to educate Microsoft about the Citrix value. It took a couple of hours really, and they quickly realized, wow, these Citrix dudes generate a lot of business for us. And then to explain to the Citrix people how to work with a much bigger partner like Microsoft, that you got to be patient and you got to understand there's many components to Microsoft. It's not just the engineering team, there's a corporate team, there's a field team, and you need to engage with each one of those teams to make sure that your message is understood for their objectives and for their go-to-market perspective, not just an engineering relationship. So that took me about 6 months to work that out. And then, they had a Partner of the Year competition. They started to do that for their channel reselling partners and their ISVs. And we became Partner of the Year overnight. And in 6 months, we were Microsoft's first ISV Partner of the Year.
I mean, that's an incredible turnaround. It sounds like, the Citrix, back in Fort Lauderdale, you were negotiating a bit of a crisis. Exactly how dire did it get with Microsoft?
Yeah, it was very dire. I mean, I think it was Q3 2002. For the first time ever, Citrix missed its forecast for the quarter. It's a public company and it didn't put out a forecast every quarter. And that's why the stock price obviously tanked, because they missed the number for that quarter. And there was a number of very large deals to close. And every one of them said, well, with the messages Microsoft's making in the marketplace, we're going to wait to see what Microsoft comes out with their new. The code name was Hydra, if you recall. Sorry, Hydra was the conversion. It was Bearpaw. Bearpaw was the product that Microsoft was going to release, the next version of terminal services that would not need any third-party add-ons. So that's all the message said that came out from Microsoft. They had this sort of a case study from one of their customers that said, we're trying the new version of terminal services, and it looks like we won't need any third-party add-ons going forward. That's all it said. It didn't mention Citrix, but that article was enough for the bigger customers to stall their orders with Citrix. And that Q2 2002 was the quarter that Citrix missed the number for the very first time.
Yeah. So talk about a little bit about, I know you must have sort of done this great education on both sides of how to partner, right? And what the win-win was, but ultimately it's crazy. 6 months later, you're in line for Partner of the Year, right? So, talk a little bit about, the mechanics of that, right? It just seems like a remarkable thing. And I know obviously part of it was Microsoft realized, oh, these RDCal licenses, this is a found revenue, right? Like there's a huge, there's a huge sort of found amount of revenue that's coming drafting off of the Citrix success. So talk about that for a minute.
So I built this spreadsheet. I mean, I actually, back then as an executive at Microsoft, I knew Steve Ballmer, the CEO. So I wrote him an email when I joined Citrix, and then I wrote him another one when I moved to the US, just to let him know that I think there's more that we could be doing together if we just could work better together. He pushed that down to your good friend, your chairman today, Vecti. And Vecti and I, we had a meeting, and I just sat down and I built this spreadsheet showing them our revenue and how we get our revenue and how each time we win a deal, what it means to Microsoft, not just the TS cal, the server cal, the SQL cal, and then the Office business that would continue as a result of more desktops connecting to the Windows environment. So I built this spreadsheet, and in the end, the summary of it was every dollar that Citrix makes, Microsoft makes 75 cents with no effort at all. No effort at all. And the majority of that was obviously the TS cal. So it was an incredible revenue machine and a profit machine for Microsoft that I think a lot of people at Microsoft just did not understand.
Right.
That they had this Citrix ecosystem of partners, great partners and sellers in the marketplace, really selling a technology that required Windows as a platform in every component of the technology. And once you prove that to Microsoft, they go, wow, okay. So, and by the way, they said, what we're building in terminal services is just these new 3 or 4 new features. They're not really going to, change the way people use Citrix. But I think the marketing people with their marketing just sort of took liberty to talk about what this third-party customer had referenced. Even though the product wasn't released, it wasn't in the market, they'd come out with this press release, which eventually they agreed to remove off their website, by the way. And I won't talk about the actual customer or the customer name, but they took it off their website. And of course, the relationship got better and Microsoft went out with a different set of messages. And then the partner of the year was just, us and every other partner of the year competing. And, with the numbers that we could prove to Microsoft we were making for them, no other partner could prove anything close to us. And, Steve Ballmer, I don't know if you ever heard him, he often would say, if you want to be a great partner of Microsoft, go talk to the guys in Fort Lauderdale. They'll tell you how to do it.
Yeah, well, that's great. You went from sort of turned a disaster into a gold standard relationship. So congratulations. I'd love to dig a little bit more into sort of your time at Citrix. Like you got there early on and watched over 22 years, watched it to grow into 3 billion plus. You obviously got to work with Mark. Talk to us a little bit about sort of the the sort of partnership ethos that, I was at one time a partner of Citrix, right? And I can say from my chair, I got to look at all of the different partner programs, Cisco, NetApp, Dell, all the different programs out there. And I will say there was a sort of ethos around, being the best partner of your entire portfolio that Citrix led with. And I'd love to sort of dig into sort of how that vision came about. And, you clearly were part of that, more on the alliances side, but it clearly was part of the magic of Citrix for so long. So maybe you can speak a little bit about the culture that created that.
Yes, of course. And a lot of it, of course, was around Mark Templeton. I mean, he was an amazing guy, an amazing CEO. And also, he was very much a partner guy. He came from the partner world himself. So he understood what partners were all about. And I think when he was at Citrix, he built a great partner program. I think it was very clear to Citrix that you really can't do everything yourself. Citrix had a bit of software, a bit of infrastructure software, which was pretty cool. It needed to sit on Windows, so you needed to work with the Windows resellers. It required other components such as devices and thin clients and other pieces of software. And, the IGEL, of the worlds, etc., were part of that ecosystem. And then no one company like a Citrix could sell all those components. You really needed a reseller, put them all together and sell them as a solution. I think that's what Citrix really understood very, very well. Mark Templeton drove that ethos in the company and set up that culture that we really got to work with our partners because they're the ones that provide the complete solution to the customer. So I give a lot of that credit to Mark. I learned a lot from him and how to be a better vendor for our resellers and make sure they trained and enablement. I spent a lot of time at Citrix developing and making sure we developed enablement material for our partners so they could be very well educated and they could address the customer problem. And every time the partners became very good at it, it obviously took a lot of pressure off Citrix that they could go and innovate and build product while their markets ran the go-to-market programs. Now, today, of course, Citrix have got a very big enterprise sales force as well as the very, very large customers require vendor involvement. But I think the partner network for Citrix has done them very well. I think it will continue to do well going forward.
Mm-hmm. And so, obviously you have a long career. You've got to see a lot of leaders. You've got to lead a lot of teams yourself. You've worked with a lot of the big famous names in this industry. From your perspective, like what is a good leader look like? Like what are the characteristics that you've seen in terms of you speak to Mark or Balmer or Bill?
Yeah, I actually did get to work with Bill a few times. He was definitely a interesting leader, a very tough leader. And the 3 or 4 meetings I got to be in with him. Steve Ballmer was also a very, very tough leader. Mike was a very different. He was a more gentle leader. More had more empathy with the people around him. I think all of them as leaders, though, were all very, very good in their own way. They all surrounded themselves with smart people. Often smarter than themselves, and they would recognize that these people were smarter than themselves in their area of focus. Now, I never was an alliance guy, but I was always a sales guy, and I understood how to talk to people and deal with people. And of course, the biggest part of that is listening. So I did educate the team at Citrix about alliances through how to understand someone else by just listening to them and understanding what they need to do. And if you can help them do what they need to do, that will help you in return. It's very simple. Right. I mean, customers at the end of the day, same thing. I mean, they buy your product, but at the end of the day, you're helping them solve a business problem, and they need that problem solved with your product. Therefore, they will buy it from you in return. That's how you help them. So I think these very large, very good leaders out there are really just smart listeners, and they are people that surround themselves with good people that can work with them and educate them more than the other way around. I think leaders know that they need good people around them that can't do it all themselves.
Exactly.
I've worked for ones that think they can do it all themselves, and they don't last long at all. We won't mention names, but there's a few of them out there as well.
We have our favorites. So we love to talk about successes, Nabeel, and like obviously you've had some great stories in terms of things you've done that have turned out great. But I often feel like in my career, some of the biggest learning moments are actually when you fell flat on your face. So have you had any of those that you want to share with us where you had a big learning moment?
Of course not.
No.
I have had them. Yes. Do I want to share them with you? I'm not sure.
No.
But I mean, obviously you do. I mean, every sales deal that you have that you lose is a learning moment, of course.
True.
And I've lost more than I've won, that's for sure. So that's a good thing. And developing the business in Asia was interesting. You go into these countries thinking that you know everything about your technology, and you do, but you don't know about their culture and the way they work. So in China, it's different to India, different to Korea, different to even Singapore, Indonesia. So you need to, just sit down and take time to learn from them how they work. And you got to be careful. You can't work exactly how they work, of course, but you got to learn from that. So I definitely misstepped many, many times in my presentations in front of the Chinese community or the Asian community, where things get translated and they get misinterpreted and all the rest of it. So yeah, I've had my fair share of mistakes.
I can very much relate to that, right? As an American running a German headquartered company, there's a level of sort of empathy you have to have in terms of the way things are done, and like you said, being a good listener. And also, the translation is very challenging. It's in English to German and German to English. These the same word can be interpreted very, very differently. So this is sometimes part of what you need to be face to face, right, and have the relationships and have the trust, build that trust with people, so that if there is misunderstandings, they know somewhere in the heart that your heart is in the right place, right, and that you're on the same path together. So yeah, I can relate.
And the same with business. I mean, the Microsoft relationship, and I talked about how we turned it around, but it went sour again back in the 2012, 2013 timeframe. I mean, I didn't finish my story. I mean, I was in the US for 6 years. I did the Microsoft relationship. I took on product management for a couple of years of ZenApp, and we rebuilt that product with a more focus on quality. Then my assignment in the US was over, and I went back to Australia. I mean, I headed back home, took my 3 kids, and we went back to Sydney, Australia, staying with Citrix and still developing the Asia Pacific region. I did a lot of work there, building China. We built an R&D center in China and a number of other things. And then all of a sudden, I got the knock on the door again.
Right. So you were like Nabeel to the rescue again.
Yeah, the Microsoft relationship has gone sour again. Microsoft has built this product called Azure Remote App on the cloud, completely isolated from anyone else working with it. Microsoft and Citrix were starting to butt heads on mobility. Citrix had Zen Mobile and Microsoft had Intune, and the relationship got sour again. Actually, the business, the Citrix business was slowing down in 2014, 2015 from a product perspective. So they asked me to come back a second time to the US.
Wow. So you came in and worked through that, and you were with the company up until about a year ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago, I guess you left.
Yeah, so I came back again. I had to convince my wife a second time to come to the US. Now she said, I'm only going to go to Florida, nowhere else.
Right.
So it was very clear that we could only come to Florida, and we did. Ended up in Florida again. It's such a great place, and she had said friends, and she'd started her own business here. She's an image consultant. So we came back a second time with the two boys. My daughter got married and stayed in Sydney. The two boys came out with us, and they're both actually working out in New York companies now. And yeah, the problem was Microsoft again. The relationship was going sour. So we sat down and we powwowed this time with Brad Anderson, who was running the business there. And we sorted things out and we got it back on track again. And I think the relationship got strong. We built Zen App Essentials on the cloud, and we got the Citrix Cloud business running. I was part of the team that built Citrix Cloud on Azure and got all that working again. And then I did a couple of other roles at Microsoft. I look after the architecture team. One of the things of building Citrix Cloud was great, and I think it was a great product, but no one was moving to it. And why? Because there was no tools. There was no way to move. There was no migration information. So we built a set of tools for our customers to move from the on-prem world of Zen App and Zen Desktop to the Citrix Cloud of apps and desktop services. We built the Citrix Workspace app, and I ran out of runway, and that's when I left Citrix at the beginning of 2020, just before Mr. COVID came around.
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit about COVID. How have you done through COVID? Obviously lived in Florida, where I guess COVID didn't really exist, right? So you, how has it been for you?
Well, it did exist, and I actually did get COVID myself in October of 2020. It was a mild situation for me, luckily, but I did get it. But it was there was a lot of positives with COVID, as much as it was negatives. I mean, for me, my two boys in New York came down and they stayed with us in Fort Lauderdale. So the whole family was together for about 7-8 months. So that was a great positive thing. I had just left Citrix, so I was not working. I was doing part-time work. Some of the research work I was doing, I think I mentioned that to you before, working with some of the industry analysts and some of the researchers looking at acquisitions and different components of the end user computing ecosystem. I worked a little bit with Flexible IT as well, helping them build their business in the US. And then the Tahima job came along just a few months ago.
Yeah, so talk to us a little bit about how you sort of see the pandemic affecting the adoption of this technology, right? I mean, during that research, do you feel like it's a tailwind? Is it going to help the big companies adopt more seats of VDI and DAS, or how do you see the pandemic and this hybrid work?
Well, I see it from the user perspective, and the users said, you know what, I can work from home. I've had to work from home. My company forced me to work from home. I had to work from home. COVID said that we had to do it that way. So now I can work from home. So I think the users are saying to their companies, hey, I don't need to be in the office 5 days a week. I'll come to the office, but I would like to work from home 2 days, 3 days, 4 days a week, whatever is needed. And I think that's what's driving it. This idea of hybrid work is being brought upon by the users saying, I can be productive, and sometimes even more productive by working from home. So I think it's definitely here to stay. I mean, it was a mantra from Citrix and our ecosystem of partners for a long, long time. But now as a whole industry is saying, this is the norm. Right. Going forward, it's going to be a work from home concept, and the office is beginning to become a part-time idea that we will go to the office. Some people need to be in the office more than often, but more than others. But in general, I think the whole idea of hybrid work and working from home or working from anywhere is here to stay, and it's really driving the momentum in our industry as well, as you know, Jed, right, in the end user computing.
Yeah, so tell us, you now land at this Canadian DAS platform company, right at this unique inflection point. Talk to us a little bit about Tehama, and I was super intrigued to hear it from you're obviously a gift with messaging and sales. So I heard it from you in a way that I had never seen, and I hope a lot of our viewers sort of hear it for the first time also, right? Like as something that's different than the other DAS solutions that are out there. So share
Yeah.
with us, what you see there. And
It's very exciting technology. And by the way, I met Tehama through IGEL.
oh, that's great. IGEL is a
I
great
was
connector.
I was at one of your virtual events, attending one of your virtual events, and I saw this IGEL company, the Tahima company there, and I thought, I've never heard of them before. Let me go and investigate. So I did some
I'm
investigation.
guessing you
I
met
got to connect
James.
with them. Sorry, James and the CEO, Paul Valet.
Yes.
And I got to meet with them and talk to them and realize, wow, they have got something here that's quite exciting. So, and obviously I've joined them. So the technology itself is really DAS and VDI is just a component of it. Think of it as like a virtual room for the exchange of work. So they've set up these virtual rooms that can be really, they sit on AWS today and on Oracle, but they can sit on any cloud. It doesn't really matter. And they allow people to come and get work done. So whether it's third parties or your own workforce, so the whole idea of working from home is ideal for the Tahima solution. And they built the components that you need to work remotely, like the security components, the networking components, the auditing, the single sign-on, the zero trust, all that's built into the product. And by the way, it sits on top of a VDI platform. So it's a really new level of DAS that's more complete. You can have a solution up and running in about 2 hours. It can be up and running and connecting users. And users connect to the room, to this virtual room. Then you connect your corporate assets to the virtual room. So it's very secure, very locked down. The apps that you need, you put into the virtual room, the files that you need, connectivity between the corporate environment and the third party or the employees via these virtual rooms. And you think about these virtual rooms, in the end, you end up with a virtual office in the cloud. I mean, today, when you go to an office, to a corporate headquarters, you go into the first floor and it's the executive area, and the first floor is sales, and the second floor is marketing, and the third floor is finance, and the fourth floor is the engineers, and the fifth floor is the executive suite. Well, think about that whole concept of a building now in the cloud, and you can go into a virtual room for sales, a separate virtual room for marketing, a separate virtual room for third parties coming in, a virtual room for the contractors. It's amazing. I mean, it's really just the office in the cloud, but they built their technology around the components that you need to make a complete solution. So it's not VDI, it's not DAS, it's the next level up. We're calling it enterprise DAS because people understand what DAS is, but it's really what an enterprise would need to allow employees to come and do work, whether they're third parties or their own employees. It's a very powerful solution. It's very simple. They can, like I said, it can sit on any of the clouds. It can sit on top of any VDI platform. Today, it sits on AWS workspaces and or the Tahima desktop, but we can make it sit anywhere. And we just ported it to Oracle. We're working with Oracle, for delivering a enterprise DAS on the Oracle platform. But we are going to work with Microsoft and all the other players to make sure that the solution that we built on top of VDI can be enabled for any VDI company.
And I gotta imagine the security pieces of this kind of secure room, secure vault technology. This has got to be extraordinarily interesting for these companies that are getting faced with ransomware and all the breaches that we're seeing.
Exactly. I mean, the partnership with IGEL is all about, if a company really, between the IGEL OS and the UD Pocket even concept, connecting that to a device, connecting to a virtual room, all of a sudden, no matter what ransomware you might have had in your environment is locked out. You can get the employees to get their work done using an IGEL endpoint and a Tahima room without worrying about what else is in your ecosystem of people trying to break in or ransomware, etc. So very, very powerful solution. I think the partnership with IGEL is going to take us a long way.
So I love that we're here on the attic and we love to talk about origin stories. And one of the things that was unique for me when I heard this story, the origin story of Tehama is actually one of almost a spin out, right? And if you could share with our viewers that story, I think they'd be intrigued, right? This technology was actually born out of, I guess you go back full circle, your database career.
Yeah, so Tahima came out of a company called Pifian. Pifian was a database, SI company, third-party database contractors. They had about 500 people all around the world, doing work with databases for very, very large companies, very, security companies, finance companies, etc. And the customers said to Pifian, listen, look, it's great that you're doing all this work, but we don't know where your people are. We don't know who they are. They're all third-party contractors. We're worried they're touching very sensitive information and data. What can you do to make sure that what you're doing in our systems is secure and safe? So Pifian built this auditing, security, SOC 2 compliant technology to enable their third parties to connect and work with these corporate customers. And they decided to, once they built that, put it on top of a VDI platform to make it easy to deliver the service. So the VDI platform came at the end when they after they built all this security layer, this networking layer on top of their, for their employees to work and connect to these very big corporates. So in the end, they built this virtual room. So the third parties come into the virtual room, the corporate data comes one way into the virtual room, and they go, wow, this is great technology. They spun out and created Tahima, and they answered the concept of a virtual room. And today, the corporate can have multiple third parties come into the virtual room. At the same time, the third party, now the contractors that are coming in doing work, that can be connected to multiple corporates. So it's a two-way connection. It's very interesting. You can sell it to the third-party contractors, or you can sell it to the corporates, and either one of them can come and use this virtual room and build the business. But the SOC 2 compliant, the security, the auditing, all that's in the room. So you bring people into the room, you turn the room on in a couple of hours, you bring people in, you connect your backend environment, and you're up and running. It's very fast, very cool. It's using DAS and using VDI, but it's just very cool technology. And now Tahima spun out of Pifium completely. Pifium still exists as a contractor company for databases, but now Tahima is a completely separate company. Yes, they're in Ottawa, Canada, a great place. I went up there a few weeks ago.
I saw it on LinkedIn.
I went up in the summertime.
Yeah, you want to go now, not in January.
Yes, they said it's like 1 month you should come, Nabeel, and this is it. So come on up.
Well, it's good. So obviously you've worked for some very big companies, some very successful companies. What's your vision? Tehama's a fairly small entrepreneurial startup almost. So that's got to be kind of exciting to be at a startup and with all of the opportunity in front of you. What's your vision in terms of where you can take this company?
Yeah, so my experience, as you know, Jed, has been Citrix and Microsoft, and before that, Burroughs, very large companies. So it's it's great to work in a startup. It's different for me. I'm learning a lot. I'm learning. I mean, it's very hard. It's not easy because it's you got to make the numbers every month, every quarter, and they're growing quite well at Tahima. So it's going well, but it is hard work. And my role is across the board. Business development. Looking at the roadmap, looking at the architecture, looking at the alliances, building a channel, building an ecosystem. Citrix Ready is, the IGEL Ready program is a great roadmap for us to look at how we can build partnerships across the environment for Tahima. So it's exciting. I think the DAS market, as we all know, is growing in a very healthy way today in the marketplace. The pandemic has driven that, but I think if the pandemic didn't come, it was going to grow anyway. We all knew that remote work was going to happen. The idea of people commuting to the office every day, all day, wasn't going to go forever. Yeah. The pandemic's forced that to change very, very quickly. So it's accelerated the market, but now we're really in a hot spot. It's doing very, very well. We're bringing on new people. We're hiring people. We're bringing on new partnerships. We're looking for more resellers, of course, to help us scale the business. I mean, the idea is obviously just like Citrix, you can't deliver the whole solution. We deliver a component of it. We still need a lot of partners to help us do the services work, to bring the applications in, etc. So it's very, very exciting. The mindset of Tahima, the CEO there, Paul Valet, has got he's a great strategic thinker. He's got a very big picture in mind of becoming the platform for the exchange of work. So whether you're a contractor, an employee, a third party, we're going to build the platform where people can come and exchange work, the individual with the corporation. Yeah. And that's the platform we're building, and it's very, very exciting, and I'm glad to be part of that organization.
Yeah, well, it's a great intersection with IGEL. We also knew that the work was going to transform, and in 2019, we actually wrote a mission statement and kind of a vision of where we wanted to take the company. It was all about transforming the way people work and helping them, organizations, people, work differently for the betterment of the planet. So it was like a very affirming moment as we got hit with COVID, and that vision of helping transform the way the world works, right, for these better outcomes for people and the planet and organizations. It's really manifesting itself in a big way. So I guess as we bring this to a close, Nabeel, there's a huge community, as you know, out there in the end user compute space, and it's a very tight community. It's a community that you obviously shared 22 plus years of your life, synergies and summits and iForums and whatever they called it before that, and we've all been sort of scattered to the winds, but I would like to believe that we've stayed in touch digitally. We're about actually to do a Disrupt Roadshow in 11 cities, and I think you guys are part of that in a few of the cities.
Yes.
But I guess I'll let you have the last word. If there's anything you want to share with this community, this show is watched by a lot of that world that you know and love so much. So if there's anything you want to say out to your friends out there in the end user compute community, here's your chance.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, by the way, the very first Citrix event was called Synergy.
I knew I was missing one of the.
You probably were there as well. I was there. That was my first one when I had just joined Citrix. Yeah, I mean, the end user community, the people that are working in it, plus the customers that have really committed their future on it. A lot of our resellers talk about their end customers and how these end customers have spent years and years building, the whole VDI DAS environment, and it's a better way for their organization to deliver what they do. There was an acronym that we used for a long time called MAPS, MAPS, Management, Access, Performance, and Security. They're the four things that you think about from an IT perspective, and the end user computing paradigm solves all those problems very, very well. Better management, better security, better performance, and everything can run. Can now run on premise or in the cloud, and it's a hybrid world. So really, we're all in a great space, I think, for all of us. I think we're all going to grow together. I hope the community spends time to look at Tehama and what we can do working with them. We need an ecosystem of partners to be with us. We need our, the larger customers out there to look at the option of using Tahima. We're not trying to replace Citrix or replace VMware. We want to be partnering on top of that platform because we add another layer of technology. Think of it as sort of networking and security and VDI all bundled together to provide a complete solution for the end customer that's enabled instantly. So for our partners, it's not a matter of spending months or weeks setting up the environment. It's enabled immediately with the workflow that we built, and instantly the customer can start taking advantage of this end user computing paradigm that we've all built together. So I look forward to working with everyone. I definitely want to thank you, Jed, and the IGEL team for being such a great partner. And I look forward to the roadshow. I look forward to meeting with your partners and customers as you do a great event every time. And just looking forward, I think it's an exciting opportunity for all of us.
Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. And if you don't follow Nabeel on LinkedIn, you should. I learn a lot from watching his posts. And let's all stay connected, stay safe, and stay healthy. Thanks so much, Nabeel.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend. God bless you.
Thank you for stopping by the Attic. We're really excited about our next guest, David Smith, CEO of Teradici. He has an amazing story of transforming Teradici from a hardware to a software company and then recently selling it to HP. So as always, lots of interesting perspectives on tech coming your way from the Attic. Please subscribe to the IGEL YouTube channel and you'll get all the alerts about when the next episodes will drop. And until we meet again, this is Jed Ayres of IGEL wishing you a great day, be kind to each other, and be well.